Weasel here. It's April 24, 2014. We're about to take the Dodge Dakota, the 2000 Dakota, off for a test run today, running it on wood gas. And before we get things underway and light her up, we wanted to do one last walk around just so I can point a few things out, what we've done. It's been a long year project, but we finally got to the point where we could take it for a test drive. With me I have my good fishing buddy and good friend Bulldog, who's doing my video again for me, and he's also with Crossroads Photography, in case you ever have a need. But anyway, we're going to just point a few things out under the hood here. I've got my gas line coming up from underneath the truck into this elbow, and this is my gas supply. This is just another throttle body that I hooked up to open and close the gas valve for wood gas. When this valve closes, this one opens, so if I'm running gasoline, this is my air intake coming off the factory air cleaner, and then when this valve closes, this one's open and we're on wood gas. And this mixing valve back here is for just doing that, for mixing the fresh air supply with the wood gas, and I have a K&N filter on there. And then underneath this compartment I have my wiring to the relay for running the electric fuel pump, so we can shut the fuel pump off as we go. Everything is cabled up into the cab. We'll get to looking at those later, but we're just going to go around and point a few things out, so if anybody's in questions, hopefully they're answered. The only other thing I forgot to mention is here's my pressure relief valve for in case I have any backfires. This has to go someplace, and in all likelihood, if it does need to activate, it will probably put a nice divot somewhere in my hood. Alright, I got a cooling rack on the truck. It's all stainless. This is my starting blowers and an elbow on here. Inside this elbow there's a ball valve, a literal tennis ball valve, and that is hooked up to this here rod. So when the gas fire is running and it's lit, I can close the ball valve, shut the blowers off. But when for startup mode, I have to have this open so the blowers can exit the gas. At some point, hopefully in the near future, I'll be able to either automate this with a cable into the cab or a small electric motor that'll drive this, because right now it's just done so I can try the truck and see if it's going to work. But that's what these are: starting blowers and ball valve and flare connector back here. Alright, here's my fuel hopper and the hopper for storing the wood. I have a spring-loaded catch on here, and this is the only pressure relief apart from the one under the hood that I have on my gasifier. But this is what I use to fill it. It's a gasketed lid. It's off a 1976 Dodge truck. So I use the lower part of the air cleaner for my lower ring and the upper part of the air cleaner for that, so I get the benefit of the gasket. So that's what that's all about. Over here I got the Dropbox heat exchanger. It's a jacketed heat exchanger with its own blower. The fresh air comes in here, it scrolls around the outside of the Dropbox and exits out here. Actually quite warm, and that's just for some additional gas cooling. And then over here I've got the condensate tank for the condensate that comes off the lower gutter of the gasifier, which would have some tars and water in it. And then my blowers over here, I'll just turn them on quick. They're set up on a three-way switch, so I can actually run the blowers from inside the cab or from outside the cab. The other important thing here is here's my fresh air intake for the running the gasifier. At some point this may be stainless steel, but for now it's just PVC. I got a ball valve on here so I can open and close it. Don't expect it to last for long, it'll probably tar up. This is my wet scrubber over here. It's a 2-column scrubber, and I have a pump, and I have a float switch on here. And what we do is we draw oil out of the scrubber at a high level, and we pump it up through my coiled heat exchangers up here, which are baseboard hydronic thin tubes that I picked up. There's 2 of them mounted top and bottom. And then that oil is cooled and it comes in here and it drops into the top of the wet scrubber, where there's a pan, and there's about 75 1/8-inch holes in the pan, and it literally rains, or we deluge the gas coming into the wet scrubber with this oil, And then from this point on down to this weld seam, it's packed with a stainless steel scrolls of stainless steel wool. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to drop the tar out or make sure we don't have any tar passing through, and drop some soot out as well as some condensate. What will happen, and it did this back in January and tested it, and that is we get a fair amount of condensate coming off the gas because we're cooling the gas down rapidly, and that water condenses and it goes into my scrubber, or the scrubber tank with the oil. But since I have some baffling in there, I don't churn the oil and the water together, so the water separates out. And then with this high level float switch here, I have a light inside the truck so that when the light comes on, I know that the fluid level is way up here and it's time to drain off the water, which at some point I will automate that as well, but right now I just have the indicator light on there. And then I've also got a thermocouple up here to measure my gas temperature leaving the wet scrubber. So that's the only way I know of if the wet scrubber is working, is just by watching the temperature of the gas. Alright, just to give you a better look, these are my fin heat exchangers I was mentioning, the hydronic baseboard heaters. I got them plumbed over to the pump, and then again coming in the bottom, across the bottom, over the top, and then in here. And the resonance time is about 20 seconds on a 2 GPM pump, so it should hopefully have adequate time to cool the gas. And then the second column, which I forgot to mention, the second column is an inverted cyclone down underneath. So when the gas passes from this side to this side, the oil and water continue on down, but there's a transition piece down in here, and the gas has to change direction and come around this way, and it scrolls, and that is used to drop out any oil that might want to carry over and or soot, especially if we can wet it out. And so then basically I have a vacant area from here on down to here, and a fitting underneath this center, so if I want to add any additional filter experiments or anything of that sort, if I need to filter more, I have the capacity to do that inside this cavity, which is just vacant. So then the gas exits here, and that's also got the thermocouple on it, comes into my cooling rack, which isn't much of a cooling rack, down to the end, back to the front, and at the midpoint of the box it goes down underneath the box, underneath the cab, and up into the engine compartment. Alright, now we'll go take a look and take a look at the control panel inside the truck. Alright, inside the truck, this is the panel that I'm using to monitor the operation of the gasifier. I have my fuel pump switches here, which I can actually turn the fuel pump off, and there's 8 positions that vary the voltage to the pump. So as I'm going, I can run hybrid and actually add some fuel pump voltage to it, but for right now it's on a full fuel pump, but it does have the capacity to turn the fuel pump entirely off. This is the scrubber, the pump that runs circulates the oil, and my heat exchanger blower that's on my drop box, and my shaker for the grate, the main power for the panel, and then I've got a pressure sensor here, or pressure switch, or pressure indicator for the rail pressure on the rail, and then the hopper pressure, and then the heat exchanger pressure. And another reason why I did this is I wanted to see the pressure differential between the heat exchanger and the rails, so I can monitor the pressure drop across my scrubber in case I would tar the stainless steel wool up, or if it would plug up. The only way I would know that is by seeing the pressure differential between the rail and the heat exchanger. Then I've got my hopper temperature, my gas temperature, and then I got my hearth temperature. I got my starting blowers here with an indicator light, so at least I'll know if I left the blowers on or not. And I've got my air fuel ratio gauge, and then I have my scrubber condensate, which I was pointing out before, the high level switch on my tank, and that's right here. So if when we get enough water in there, this light should come on, and then this button here will be for turning on a small pump to actually eject the water out, which is yet to be done. So I'm just going to start the truck up and show you how that panel works. So when I want to power my panel up, that's Power to the panel. All my switches light up, my pressure switches, my temperatures, and my scrubber pump right there. My heat exchanger blower, my shaker, and the on and off switch that shuts the whole panel off or down. So, and this air fuel is on all the time. That's recommended that it be on whenever the engine's running, so it's wired that way. All right, we're gonna go start the gasifier. Okay, I forgot to point out before, on this side of the truck, on the driver's side, I have my mixing valve control right here, which I put right next to me on the console, so I don't have to reach very far, and I got a little T-handle on there, and that's for the mixing of the gas to the fresh air. And then the pull choke lever down there is for just switching between running on gasoline and running on wood gas. So those are the only other controls that are in the cab apart from the panel.